What is up, guys? Welcome back. This is the Cloud Pilot, and in this episode of the Cloud Pilot podcast, we are going to talk about managers. So, for that, we have a very special guest who has a variety of experience over several domains as a manager, and he's coming from Google. So, today we have Prashanth Subhramanyam, who's a head of developer advocacy at Google Cloud, to talk about becoming a manager. So let's listen to what he has to say. This is the Cloud Pilot, and you're listening to the Cloud Pilot podcast. Hi, Prashant. Welcome to the Cloud Pilot podcast. It's absolutely a pleasure to see you here.
Hey Udesh, how are you? Thank you for having me here. It's my pleasure being here. Thanks for inviting me over.
Yeah, thank you so much for finding time to spend with our audience and to share things about managerial stuff, because most people don't really know what happens as a manager. Everybody thinks that being a manager is a very easy task, but today we're going to tell them or show them how becoming a manager or being a manager is one of the hardest things in the world to do. Maybe why don't we kickstart our conversation with your background, where you came from, how you have been doing, career journey, everything.
Yeah, I know. I don't want to scare off your audience when you start saying that being a manager is one of the most difficult things. I think you just have to find your niche, right? In terms of what you like doing, what you enjoy doing. We'll talk about that. As to my background, I think it's been quite simple that way, right? So nothing very exciting. I am from Bangalore. I've been here all my life, done all my studies in Bangalore. I've worked all my life in Bangalore. So that's basically who I am. And I've been here all my life. I've close to about 18 plus years of experience. I used to be with SAP Labs for about 10 years. Then I joined a startup, Apigee. I was there for a couple of years. And I'm now with Google for about 6 years. So that's basically who I am. I've gone through the entire, journey as a software engineer, turned into an architect, developing enterprise applications, then went into the startup world. Basically, you end up doing whatever you need to do in the startup world. So worked with customers, worked on the products, and so on. Came into Google, and again, have been working as an engineer, as an engineering manager. I was with Google Pay for a little bit. I worked there for a while, working with a lot of our partners in Google Pay. And then currently I am with Google Cloud. I am a developer relations engineering manager. So I am a developer advocate as per my role, and I manage a team of developer advocates as well. So that's basically been my journey.
Yeah, it's almost like a 360 journey. You went from a software engineer and then to a manager, and then into various categories like, developer advocacy, solutions architecting. So you went into different domains, which means, and of course, 18 years is so much experience. It's a diverse, strong portfolio, I would say. So really amazing to hear about your journey. So as a manager, how is your daily life look like? Is it all same? Because, most people think like, managers are somebody who is just managing from the top end. They just have to give orders and then they just relax. So what is the truth behind it? How is the daily life of a manager look like?
It's a very different perspective, right? Being a manager. Typically, what happens when anybody thinks about the word manager is that you have people reporting up to you. Again, in my role, I take care of a team of advocates, right? And I'm also responsible for the advocacy strategy for some of the regions that come under me, right? So I basically take care of advocacy for India, Southeast Asia, and Latin America. So my responsibility is also to try and think about what we should be doing in these regions. What do the developers do? So let's take a step back, right? So let's take a look at my role specifically. As I said, I am a cloud developer advocacy manager. So which means that I am looking at the developers and practitioners in these regions who are looking at using Google Cloud. And what I try to understand is I try to understand where they are, what are the problems they're trying to solve, what are the products they're trying to use, how are the Google Cloud products helping them? Right? What do I need to do to bring the Google Cloud products in a way that it is easily accessible and usable by them? What I'm trying to say is, as a manager, my responsibility here is, in a sense, the content side of things, right? Taking care of understanding the strategy in the areas that I'm working with, understand what I need to do to make Google Cloud accessible to to my audience, as well as help my audience of developers and practitioners be successful. Once I am comfortable, once I know what to do and how to do this or have some ideas in my mind, then I can help lead my team to execute on this. So unless I, as a manager, have a vision, have a direction for what my team needs to be doing, right, what the team's deliverables are, I cannot coach and guide my team members in the right way. Right. So this is the first step. When you talk about the day in the life of a manager, it's not necessarily a day, it's a week, it's a month probably. But these are basically the things that go into our minds, right? Specifically, like I said, this is my role. In the engineering manager role, I had done some things differently, but this is what I need to think about.
I've heard that, there are different types of managers, there could be people managers, there could be, technical managers. What are those different types of managers, or what are those different categories of managers?
It's a very interesting question, right? And it's good to understand the kinds of managers, because as a manager, that will help you execute your duties and your responsibilities. So depending on the company that you're in, they define the word manager in different ways, and they have different roles and expectations, right? So for example, there's a term called people manager. And in certain companies, you have a people manager who is purely responsible for people, right? So which means doing things like one-to-ones, right? Having your weekly touch points with the team members, with your reports, right? Trying to understand how they are, how are they going about their work, what are some of the blocks that they're facing, how can you help them, thinking about their personal development, right? What are the new things that they should probably upskill themselves on, what kind of trainings are available for them to attend. This comes in when you're doing pure people management. Typically in such organizations, and again, they call this a matrix setup, right? There is somebody else who's owning the content piece, right? In the terms of what the team member should be working on, right? Or owning the product itself. So somebody else owns that. As a people manager, it's your responsibility to help the individuals be skilled that they can execute on those products or projects, right? So that's a pure people management. And then you have engineering management, right? So engineering managers own sometimes, again, in Google, engineering managers have responsibility for the product that is being built as well, right? So engineering managers negotiate with product managers who come up with the product vision, try to understand what needs to be done technically to help deliver on the product vision, right? And then people responsibilities are there as well. In addition to that, you have code responsibilities, right? Which is why it's an engineering manager. So doing things like code reviews, doing things like helping technically getting in and unblocking the individual, right? If they're stuck in a particular thing, how do I use the specific library? How do I manage my dependencies? There could be various things, maybe looking at things like code style guides, at some point, even maybe setting up the initial high-level architecture for the system that we're building out. So these all comes into an engineering manager role. So broadly, an engineering manager, again, I'm talking purely about software engineering. You could have multiple roles, but where the difference comes in between the different types of managers is whether you have only people responsibility or whether you have people plus content responsibility.
Again, being a manager, as I said in the beginning, it's one of the hardest things, at least according to me, it's one of the hardest things to do. What are those challenges that a manager can potentially face? Given that we have a lot of categorizations for managers, what are those challenges? Are there any common challenges, or is it specific to whichever domains they are in? What are those challenges?
It depends on, let's say, the individuals, the way they operate, right? And that depends whether they're going to be successful as a manager or not. And hence comes this difficulty, right? So if somebody is not naturally a manager kind of person and the role is forced onto them, you end up finding it difficult, or you don't know what to do, right? But for somebody who likes working with people, right, who enjoys seeing other people grow, who enjoys developing other people, enjoys looking after the careers of other people, managerial path is a great direction. So that's something that you need to think about. As I said, so as a manager is somebody who is responsible for people, right? And that now changes the dynamics completely. So what this means is now you're responsible not only for yourself as an individual, what you work on, what you deliver, you're responsible for other people as well, right? You're responsible for the careers and the success of the individuals who report to you. So which means if a person has X skills, you need to ensure that the work given to them is compatible with those skills. If you give somebody work as a manager, right? Let's say you do the work distribution, that is one of the roles that the manager plays. And if you end up giving them a work which requires skills Y, then that person will fail. Though they're actually a good person, they can do what they know to do very well, you're setting them up for failure. So this is a responsibility that comes to somebody as a manager. And then, yes, growing them, understanding, finding these. So I don't like the word manager as much. I in one of my previous roles where I managed people, I was called a coach. And I really like that, right? Because as a coach, I am looking out for people and trying to identify opportunities, how to grow them, where are they faltering, where do they need help. Those are certain things that I coach them rather than the manager term, which feels a little orthodox, right? But I feel those are important skills that you need to do as a manager, that you need to execute.
How can somebody become a manager? What skills do they need? And what should they showcase themselves in order to become a manager?
It's an opportunity as well, right? There needs to be an opportunity available for you to become a manager for one, right? That is typically the baseline. And this happens when, let's say, a position opens up, when the team grows, you have a lot of people, and then one manager cannot handle all the people. Typically in these instances, you have two managers, or let's say somebody at a managerial level moves out of that particular organization, and then there's an opportunity to become a manager, right? So the first thing, which we need to be very clear, right, is the opportunity needs to be there to be a manager. That doesn't mean you only keep waiting for that opportunity, right? There are a lot of skills that you build upon yourself. So as I said before, introspect what you would like to achieve out of being a manager, right? At some point, I really want to talk about, is manager a path to promotion, right? So maybe we'll talk about that. I don't honestly feel so, but it's a role, right? It's, for me, a manager is as much of a role as an individual contributor, right? Or a software developer. It is just you execute, you deliver on different things, right? Different responsibilities. So first thing, think about that. Do you like working with people? Do you like grooming people? Do you like growing people? Can you take on the responsibility of both success and failure of other people? So that is very important for a manager, right? To take care of the team and to play a part. We say this, right? So in case of a failure, we take on the responsibility as a manager. In case of success, we hand over the success to the team, right? And that's basically the kind of mentality that you need to be in. Second thing is look for opportunities. If you really like to become a manager, if you like what it means, look for opportunities to hone those skills, right? To practice those skills and demonstrate those skills. Sometimes what could happen is some companies have interns. So that is an opportunity to probably manage one individual and start from there, right? So you get an opportunity for, let's say, 3 months or 6 months, manage an intern, take care of the intern, do your one-to-ones with them, understand what their goals are, understand what their blocks are, help them out with their deliverables. So that's a way to get started. Some teams typically have something called a tech lead, right? So you sort of become a lead of a team. Now, the lead is where somebody else does the people management part, right? Where somebody else takes care of, let's say, the year-end ratings and the salary cycles and so on, right? So as a tech lead, you typically don't do that, but you get to do all the other things, right? Where you take care of you have the content ownership and you're taking care of people and looking out, doing your stand-ups, maybe checking for blocks and things like that. Essentially, you're getting responsibility for other people's work, other people and people's work. Yes, as a lead, you end up giving that feedback to a manager, but the other manager is the one who actually executes on the feed, right? So sort of buffers you from having to do the hard things as a manager.
How can somebody excel in their role as a manager, and especially in a tech company?
I remember a quote, and I don't know exactly what he said, but one of a manager in a person who managed a really large team. He said this once: being a manager, you can deliver 10x, 100x more than what you do as an individual, right? Because it's not just one person delivering this, but it's a whole team delivering on this piece of software or the product or whatever you're doing. As a manager, to be successful as a manager, as I said, you take care of your people. What boils down to the end, is the output of the team. Ensure that your team is happy, ensure that your team is successful, ensure that the team is able to deliver on the business goals and the business requirements. And automatically that will reflect on you, right? Because you are the one who enabled the team to do that. That is what success means as a manager. Success is not growing your team by 10, 20, 30, 40, 50. That will happen eventually. Why is it that the team is growing? The team is growing because you are able to deliver output with your team, right? It's because you are able to make your team successful. It's because you may be able to make your team grow. So again, if you look at promotions as a manager, right? Not promotions to a manager, somebody who manages other managers, right? So for example, if you're a manager, you grow a team, you're doing really good work, you get a larger team, you realize you can make 2 or 3 more managers under you and they can manage the team, and then you elevate yourself, right? Again, with the opportunities, with the growing company and things like that, this happens. But this is basically how you see that you're being successful as a manager when such things happen.
So how does somebody stand out as a great manager? Because, we have managers and then we have great managers. So how can somebody become a great manager, and what are those skills they need to develop in order to become a great manager?
When you say a great manager, I might want to then start using the term a leader. So a manager who only executes certain things will end up just being a manager. A manager who's able to groom the team, grow the team. Delegation is a very important part of a manager. You need to know how to delegate and when to delegate. There are certain things that you need to own yourself as a manager. For example, let's say somebody higher up has certain things to do, and it needs to be done on a very tight timeline. At some point, you may think that, okay, this is something that I would want to do. Let's say something comes in which is very interesting, right? That you say, okay, I always wanted to work on this topic, so let me work on this. Now you're sort of gathering all the balls, right? You're saying, okay, I will do this, I will do this, I will do this. And you end up becoming a bottleneck for your entire team by doing this. You need to know how to delegate, right? Give clear directions and guidance to the team. So when you're delegating something to the team, you need to tell them when it is expected, what is the expected output. You need to ensure that you have a right review process so that you review the quality of the output. This is basically what you're doing to help the team. Delegation and guidance, I think it's one of the very important skills what a manager should be doing. Stakeholder management, right? You need to both manage down and manage up, and maybe manage sideways as well, right? But there are a lot of people that you may end up working with as a manager, right? Who are your stakeholders? You need to know how to work with different kinds of people, different roles of people. Even within the team, every single person in the team cannot be managed in the same way, cannot be handled in the same way. Each person is different. You need to know what makes each person tick, what kind of appreciation and what kind of support you give to each individual is different. So these are things you need to start thinking about as a manager. And when you get all these things done, right? And you, as I said, the previous thing that you asked, how can a manager be successful? Doing all this, you will see that you're being successful as a manager. You will see that your team is being successful as a manager. Sort of that is where you rise beyond somebody who's just executing, right? And when you're doing this and when other people look up to you, look up to how you're doing things, that is probably where you're actually now leading people in the right direction, right? So that goes on to becoming a leader. So yeah, I would say that's sort of how to differentiate yourself and how to rise up.
So what do you think can somebody do in order to become a manager? Just maybe as a follow-up question, how can somebody find opportunities to become a manager? They might, hearing all these, they can work on building their skills, but how do they find that opportunity? How is that, doors open for them?
Easiest way in a growing company, if you're in a growing company, is to demonstrate those skills, work with, let's say, a team that is growing, work with your manager, let people know your intention. I think that's very important, right? So let people know your intention. So if you are in a team and you're not a manager right now, of course, right? Because you want to become a manager, work with your manager and let them know this is what you're looking to do. Try to get opportunities. So sometimes your manager will give you those opportunities so that you can shine, right? And you can show that you're a manager material, as we like to call it. Network with other managers, other groups. Maybe an opportunity will open up elsewhere, right? That you can go try. These are very good ways to get into a manager role, look for opportunities within your organization. Of course, easy way is to look for an opportunity elsewhere and jump elsewhere, right? But then, as I said, it's always better to try something out, show that you have those skills, right? Before you take on the role. You can always interview somewhere else, look for other opportunities elsewhere on LinkedIn, on career sites, look for manager opportunities, junior manager if you're just starting off something, right? Or manager level 1, as they call it in some companies. You can always try that. You're starting off with a completely clean slate. Unless there's a reason for you to go away from your company, you wouldn't be doing that. Whereas looking for something within your own company, building your network, building your relationships, and then letting people know that you're open for an opportunity is a really great way. I've seen a lot of people getting such opportunities by using these methods, right? By talking to peers and letting other people know that they're ready to be a manager. And that way you're within your company, you understand your company better. A lot of the unknowns are taken away when you do that, right? So you know the company, you know how they operate, you know who's who, and then you can focus on executing the managerial duties. And that will help you become successful faster. So 2 different ways of looking at it, right? Again, depending on what your baseline is, where you're starting.
Yeah, I think that's really relevant, because I believe showcasing is the most important part for any opportunity, because that's what I share for people. I share with people the very same point. Showcase your opportunity, let others know what you're capable of. Again, as a manager, how do you recognize success? There could be personal success, there could be success for a teammate, somebody who is at your peer level or somebody who you are managing? How do you recognize success, and how are they encouraged?
Start thinking about KPIs, right? Or indicators, metrics. This is something that you would need to start thinking about. How do you know if your team is being successful? Are we delivering more features in every sprint, right? Is my velocity good? Is my team velocity increasing? You will think about this. Any kind of content, right? So on the advocacy side, we think a lot about content or contributing to the product. Is it increasing? Are there KPIs? So set targets for yourself, set targets for the team. See that we're able to meet those numbers. If you're not meeting that, then look for improvements. What can we do? What can we fix to actually go and meet those numbers? You need to measure, right? You can never say that you're successful if you don't have a baseline that, or, one, you have to set a baseline, set a target to meet and to exceed. And second, you need to know that you're reaching those targets, right? So you need to be able to measure yourself at every point of time. So these are different things that you need to definitely think about as a manager. Depending on what the team is working on, depending on what kind of a manager you are, it will be different, right? So let's go to a people manager who doesn't own the content part of things. It's actually a very great, let's say, a challenge in a sense in that case, right? Because let's say you're an engineering manager, you have the technical chops. If things are going south, you would just get into the code, you would code it up, probably you've been a very strong individual contributor, individual suite before. So you may end up saving the team, right? But when you're a people manager only without content responsibility, you cannot do this, right? In which case, again, you're looking at growing the people, identifying those gaps, identifying why somebody's not able to deliver, looking at inter-team friction, right? Are people not gelling well with each other, not working with each other? End of it, your stakeholder is, let's say, the product manager or, maybe even a scrum master who's looking at deliverables, right? So ensuring that we have the sprint velocity, that we're able to deliver things on time, and we're able to deliver more as a team matures, as a team bonds together and executes as a performing team. In summary, come up with KPIs, come up with metrics that you have for yourself and for the team. Ensure that you follow up on it, check that we are able to reach those metrics, and that will help you determine, right, whether you're on track, you're falling behind, or you're going ahead as a team.
We talked about how success is recognized. How does managers face failures? We talked about success, but again, when it comes to failure, if there is a success, there would always be a failure at some point. It doesn't necessarily have to be at the same time, but at some other point. How do managers face failures, and how is it embraced and accepted?
A very good question. I mean, very few people talk about failures, right? So it is a part of life. It's a part of journey, right? It happens. So firstly, you need to be open to the fact that we are going on a wrong trajectory, right? And this is where I think the previous question made a lot of sense, right? So those metrics and KPIs to determine what you're doing, how you're progressing, is very useful, because it's not, you don't fail as a team or as a manager after 1 year, right? It is not an on-off switch that you just fail after 1 year. You gradually get there. You're missing deadlines, you're missing deliverables, you're losing it over time. And you have to recognize that, right? So firstly, ensure that failure, making yourself aware of failures as it happens, 1%, 5%, 10% deviation, start recognizing it. Secondly, make people, your stakeholders or people higher up, aware of this, right? Take their help. The way that your team is looking to you to help, right, as their manager, you should also look at your managers and your leaders in your organization for support to see how we can recover, because it's the collective experience as an organization, right, where people would have navigated through such situations. They can help you along. So that's the first thing, right? So try to make people realize that we're heading in that direction, and let it not be a surprise, right? Things really get bad when it comes as a surprise. You're expected to deliver something, and after 6 months you say, oh, sorry, I missed my deadline, I can't deliver this, I need 6 more months, right? That's going to be really bad. Instead, let people know that something is going wrong. Can we reduce the scope? Right? Try to correct the situation. Of course, if failures do happen when you get to that stage, either a small failure or a large failure, whatever it is, think about it. Maybe do a retrospective, right? Talk to the team, talk to the people who are involved in this to understand what happened, what went wrong, how could we have fixed this? And when you tell people, right? So what is failure? Failure is basically not meeting certain goals, not meeting certain targets. So it's basically you're telling somebody that this is what was expected out of me or my team, and we have not been able to meet it. You don't end the conversation there, right? You tell what next, what can we do about it, right? If you just stop there, and that's where you're letting people down. right? Because somebody had put their trust in you to deliver on this. But when you go back saying that, yes, I'm sorry, this happened, but this is what we can do, right? This is how we can fix it. Or this incident happened due to which this happened, and I know how to take care of this so that this incident doesn't happen the next time, right? So I'm sure we'll be on the right track the next time. I'm putting these guardrails in place so that we don't deviate, right? Or we catch ourselves deviating so that we don't end up in the situation again. The plan is very important, right? One, accept your mistakes, protect your team, right? Unless somebody is really wrong, in which case it's something that you have to handle and manage with the team. But you're representing the team, right? So as a team, you're representing them and you need to own what's happened. So let people know that something has happened, come up with a plan of how to mitigate it. What can we do right now to salvage the situation? And thirdly, a plan of how we can do our best to ensure that this doesn't happen again, right? So that's something that I would advise that we should be doing.
We talked about success, we talked about failures, but I think we forgot to discuss about the most important part. How does managers make decisions? I think that's the deciding factor for the success and failures. How does managers take important decisions? How do they do it?
A very interesting question. I've really not thought about that aspect, right? But again, when you talk about decisions, there could probably be different kinds of decisions, right? So how do you decide whether this is a product that I can deliver as a team, right? How do I decide when I'm delegating that this is the topic that this individual can work on, right? Or is best suited to work on? So I think there are a lot of decisions that definitely we do take, right? I don't know. It's actually quite hard. There's no formula for it, of course, right? Probably I would say a lot of it comes from experience. Maybe that's why you don't have younger folks or fresh grads, or 2-3 years experienced folks becoming managers, right? And not being very successful at it if they do become from an opposite point of view, unless they really have it in them. But a lot of things that come, right, that maybe I do naturally probably comes from the experience that I have. So I think that's one thing that's very important. So you really need to be able to experience all of these things, right? As you grow in your career, as you take on different responsibilities. Actually, it's a very difficult question, right? So as you take on these responsibilities, right, it's sort of you imbibe what's happening, what did you do, or how some things have been done. Of course, managers that you have had make a lot of difference, right? Because that way you see how they operate. I've had good managers and bad managers, right? Let's put it that way. You need to understand their styles, right? Don't blindly follow what other managers do, right? What your managers have done, but try to understand what they have done and why they have done it. That shared experience is also super important, right? I know. I mean, in machine learning, you have this transfers learning and all those kind of things, right? Where you transfer learning from one model to another. But I think probably it's very similar to that, right? In terms of managers as well. You learn your collective knowledge. You see how your peers are doing. You see how your managers up the chain are doing. What are they doing? How are they taking decisions? And there's a lot that you can learn from that and make your decision. What I would definitely encourage you to do is work with data. Take your decisions probably based on data and not a gut feel. Doing gut feel decisions may sometimes be necessary, but that should not be a habit, right? We don't take decisions based on a coin toss, right? So even when it's a gut feel or even when you're subconsciously doing it, it's because your subconscious is working and probably you have done this in the past and you know this is the way to do it. But data-driven decisions is super important, right? So if something that, let's take an example. If there's a product that your product manager wants you to build, right, or a feature your product manager wants you to build, and you have to now decide whether it's worth investing the next 3 months of my team on this product, you need to think, right? It's something you need to think about. Is it right? Can we do this? Technically, what are the challenges, right? If you end up building a feature, say, right, and the only way to build that feature is by adding a 1 second latency to your product, you should realize as an engineering manager, the quality of your product is something that you're responsible for, right? The quality and performance of the product you're responsible for, that this is a no-go, right? I cannot build this feature because what it's going to take to build that feature will add a 1 second latency on my product. And I'm responsible for this product. I need to ensure good performance for my end users, right? So think about it. Stop and think. What does it mean? What matters? What impact it has, and so on. Look at, let's say, should I build feature A first or feature B first? Maybe look at some data points. Would building this... So there's again the saying, right, where you put 20% of your effort to get 80% of the output, right? So you have these 20-80 rules, and again, it is told in multiple ways and for different reasons, right? But when you look at it, right, you have two features that you want to work on. And let's say each feature takes about 3 weeks to build out. Which feature will give you the most bang for the buck once it's delivered? Work on that first. If it's about prioritization, right? Work on the feature that is most important. You think about dependencies between features, right? So you look at critical paths, critical user journeys, and so on. So feature 1 has to be implemented before you work on feature 2. So then, of course, it's a no-brainer. You have to work on feature 1 first, right? So these are a lot of different ways in which decisions come to you, right? That you need to think about before you decide for yourself, for the team, whether you will do it, what you will do, and so on. I think one of the most important things is stop back and think about it, right? Don't make a gut decision. Look for data, ask questions, ask what does it mean if I do this? What's going to be the impact if I do this instead of that, right? Get the data, understand it thoroughly, and then do it. Try to use the help of other people, right? As a manager, you should not be shy of asking your team, right? Maybe some of them are experienced in a specific thing that you are not, right? The senior members of the team also have a lot of experience. Use their shared experience as well, right? So talk to the team, brainstorm the team. What shall we do? These are the pros. These are the cons. What do you think as a team, right? And then at the end of it, it's your decision. You need to take accountability for the decision, right? If you talk to your team, you can't say, okay, this is my team member told me, so I did this, right? And hence it failed, right? That's not the right way to do it. And you're going to be in a world of trouble if you do that. Get their opinion. Talk to your peer managers. Talk to your own manager for information, for support, right? That this is something that I have to decide on. This is something that I need to make up my mind on. Can you advise me on this? What do you think I should be looking at, right? So sometimes your manager will tell you, go find this answer, find the answer to this question. That will probably, show you the light in terms of what you need to do. So I think that's where it is. I'm not sure if I gave you a very satisfactory answer, but it's probably a mix between an art and a science, right? There's no clear formula that you can say this is the flowchart that you follow in order to make a decision.
Or I think our conversation would have given audience now much more insights about who a manager really is, what managers really do. So thank you so much, Prashanth, for making time and for coming here to talk to our audience and help them understand more about the management side of things. What do you have as an advice for them? What would you like to tell to the audience?
I realize a lot of things while talking to you, Udesh, right? In this discussion, there's definitely no substitute for experience. Management or becoming a manager is not a promotion, right? I don't consider it as a promotion. It is just another role. The way that you can be successful, you can have a career progression as an individual, you can have a career progression as a manager. At some point, you switch from being an individual into being a manager, right? So at that point, I feel, right, that those roles are on par. Being a senior developer, senior individual contributor versus starting off as a manager, right? So don't look at it as a promotion, essentially is what I'm saying, right? So don't strive to be a manager just because you want to get ahead in your career. Think about whether this is a role that you are suited for and whether you like doing it. I think we have to be honest and accept certain things. Maybe I am not cut out to doing certain things. I told you about my career, right? So 18 years, I've done every kind of a role, right? So I've done project management, I've been a sales engineer, I've done a lot of things, right? I like trying things out and deciding whether this is something that I should be doing, whether it suits me or not. Thankfully, I've been successful at many of these things, so my career has been good that way. But I've realized self-realization that I don't want to be doing certain roles. You need to have that awareness. Right? Think about it. Do you want to be a manager? Do you want to be responsible for people? If you don't know the answer to that, no problem. Look for opportunities to try it out. So that's the second thing. Decide. We are data-driven, right? So decide for yourself if management is a role. If possible, do some duties, managerial duties, and get a feel for it before you make a decision. So that's the second advice I would like to give people who want to get into the management role. First thing, again, it's not a promotion. It's a new role. So think about it that way. Second, decide if this is a role for you or do activities that help you decide whether this is the role for you. Third thing is, and what we discussed is the whole experience bit, right? So there's no substitute for experience. So do your best to get enough experience in your career before you settle on a role, right? Or even if you do a manager role, ensure that you have enough breadth and coverage and you're working on different topics that you get that experience. Because unless you have those experience, and we spoke about failures, unless you take on a project which is in a critical state, let's say, right? Many times people will put you, you take an opportunity as a manager, they put you into a project that's actually going south, right? And you need to salvage it. It will be stressful, it will be hard, you need to figure out what to do, but the learnings that you get from those projects would be incredible. Look for experience, look for opportunities. try to understand what other people have done, right? So again, network with people, understand what they have done, how their projects are running, how have they managed it, how have they mismanaged it, right? So that you can learn from others' experience. So yeah, that's what I would really recommend to people, right? It gives you satisfaction in a sense, right? So being a manager, helping other people gives you a kind of satisfaction you won't get anywhere else, if that is what satisfies you. I think it's a very good role. It's a very interesting role. I like this. I like caring for other people. I care for other people. I like taking care of them. So that's the reason I'm in this role. But do these things, figure out if this is a role for you, learn from others' experience, and I think you'll be on your way to success.
That's a wonderful piece of advice. Probably it's going to help everyone who is wanting to or going to become a manager. So thank you so much, Prashanth, for sharing your wisdom, your thoughts, all your advices. And thank you so much for finding time. How did you enjoy the podcast?
Oh, this was a great experience. I honestly didn't know what to expect coming into this, but I think we have spent so much time talking, right? I really didn't see time go by. We have spent a lot of time chatting. So it's been a great experience. You're a great host, Udesh. Definitely thank you for having me here. And it gave me an opportunity to actually think about a lot of things as well, right? So I actually have learned a lot about myself probably by talking to you. So that's been good.
So, I mean, thank you so much for making time and helping our audience understand everything about becoming a manager and all things management. Thank you so much, guys, for listening. I hope this has helped you. We'll catch up soon on another one. Till then, it's me, the Cloud Pilot, signing off.